I'll be the first to admit, I know it's early in the season. They're 10-10. The Clippers are, 500 team, but I really don't like the direction that the Clippers are going. And, you could say here again, there's a bias here because I just believe that when you want to win a championship, your offense has to run through your best player. And your best player can't be, playing a role. He has to be playing a superstar role. And I know Kawhi Leonard's had knee surgeries and injuries and things like that, but Kawhi still has so much left in the tank. He is far from washed. So anybody out there saying that he's washed, that's a lie. He's just trying to be a good teammate. He's trying to accommodate the team the best way he can so they can win, because the Clippers have tried, these last several years with Kawhi and PG going out there dropping 28 points a game between each other. And it takes so much out of them physically, by the time the end of the season comes, that's when injuries occur. So now they're just trying a different approach. And, Kawhi has been injury prone a lot himself, along with PG. So, with Kawhi specifically, since he had the most recent devastating injury, which was the ACL and then the meniscus, they're trying to be a little bit more precautious with him specifically because he's their best player. And for me, I can see that they're really trying to just get Kawhi through the season and be as healthy as possible because, as I said before, Kawhi hasn't played 10, 15, 20, hasn't played 20 games in a row since damn San Antonio days. So you can't really look at it from a standpoint of, why Kawhi isn't, dominating the way he usually does, because they're going in a different approach with him because they want to sustain his health throughout the season and go through the playoffs. And I think maybe then they'll unleash him a little bit more and let him do his thing. But I've said before, in order for this team to work, they really need balance. You know what I'm saying? So at least 3 out of 4 guys got to have like 20 points apiece. Like if Harden and, PG Kawhi have about 20 points apiece somewhere in there, sometime one guy might have 24, 25, the other one have 22, the other one have like 19, 20, something like that. Kind of like what they've been doing lately. They could win a lot of games that way because, like I said, it's balancing their offense, and they're not doing so much on offense where they can kind of, expend some energy for defense. So that really can give them a formula of winning in the regular season. But the problem that I see with the team and how I don't like things going long term, they're really trying to make this team James Harden team because, whatever they told him in regards to, trading for him, and as soon as he got there and what they expect of him, he's really taking it to heart. You know what I'm saying? He's going to take it to heart. And, when you think about last year with Embiid, yeah, he led the league in assists and things like that. But in the playoffs, he came up short again. And this is my point with the Clippers. If you're going to put the team more so in his hands because he is a better passer than everybody else on the team, and he can give you 19, 20 points a game with his passing ability, you're going to find yourself at a flaw because when the playoffs come, his game doesn't translate to the playoffs the way it should. It never has. And with him being in the forefront and him being the so-called system, it's like you're taking away from Kawhi Leonard. You're taking away from his ability to be, not only the guy on the team, but the guy that can, take this team to another level, because he's the only one on the team out of the 4 superstars that has won a championship. And like I said, you can't put the team in the hands of any player other than Kawhi Leonard on that team because none of them has won championships, or none of them is that type of, dominant type player with championship experience. So, I mean, the way they're going and how they're running their offense, I mean, I understand there's some nights some guys will be hot, some won't, but they're really trying to it looks like they're really trying to put this team in the hands of James Harden. And that's not what they should do. I've said a couple seasons ago, years ago, however you want to look at it, I said only type of point guard they really need is one who doesn't have a shoot first mentality, or they need a point guard who isn't ball dominant. And what I mean by ball dominant, of course, a point guard is going to run up and set the plays and all that type of stuff. But James Harden is ball dominant to the point where he's a scorer, too. And his first mentality is to score because that's what he does. he can facilitate at a high level because he has that gift to pass. But when you look at James Harden, his MVP years and even years after that, he still has averaged like 20 points, 11 assists and things like that. So when you put somebody like James Harden with this team, you're taking away from certain players that you really need more production from. Like Russell Westbrook, his superpowers are really taken away now, because now that he's coming off the bench, even though he agreed to do it, it really sets the Clippers back more in the long term, because in the playoffs, when playoff time come, I would rather Russ be in the starting lineup with Kawhi and PG, because you know why? Russ is going to play defense a lot harder. If defense wins championships, like Kawhi Leonard says, which is very true, then you need guys in there that's willing to play more defense and more and that play with more effort on defense. And to me, Russ plays with more effort on defense, and he plays with more of that. Russ turns the ball over a lot, but so does James Harden. James Harden is like, in the league, I think one year he was like second or third in the league in turnovers, and Russ was first in the league. So they're really about around the same, boat when it comes to that, except Harden can score a lot better and shoot the three a lot better. That's the only difference. But Russ still brings a dynamic to the team that I think that they're missing. They're a little too slow. Like I said, they've got a few, impressive wins against Denver, things like that. But that's 1 out of 3 tries. I think they played Denver two or three times this year, and that's 1 out of 3. So if it was a 7-game series, they still be down 3-1. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you can beat Denver one time, out of 7 games, but can you beat them 4 times with James Harden in there and how they're running and implementing their offense and how they're trying to run their sets? I don't think so, because first of all, if you think about the game that they had against the Nuggets the other night, Jokic was 9 for 32. Is Jokic going to go 9 for 32 in a 7-game series 4 times? I don't think so. I don't. And then on top of that, you got to look at it from this standpoint. The Nuggets got guys that can kill the Clippers anytime they want to, because like I said, look what Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan did. There was no reason for the Clippers to lose that game, but they did because they're not a well-oiled machine offensively. And I really don't think they ever will be. I think they'll just be a team where you see a lot of their progression in regards to how they play and how they, play well regular season. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if it's going to translate. I don't believe it's going to translate to the postseason like that, because James Harden gained, as we've seen throughout the years, he chokes in the postseason. He doesn't show up in games where you think that he would actually dominate. And there's games where I've actually seen James Harden where he had the better matchup. He had the mismatch in some situations, and he still didn't dominate the way people thought that he should. And, he had, 1 or 2 opportunities, to win a championship with Chris Paul and all that, but it never works out for him. When you got a guy as talented as James Harden, but he's so ball dominant, he's going to take away from Kawhi and or PG. He's going to take away from one of them. And the one that he takes away from the most really is Kawhi, because, they got Paul George out here taking all these shots and all this stuff. That's already a problem all on its own. That's definitely not going to translate over to the playoffs, because in the playoffs, the game becomes a half-court game and people lock up a lot more defensively. And I can tell you this much. Aaron Gordon on the Denver Nuggets, if they had to play them, they might slide Aaron Gordon over on Paul George consistently throughout that series. And Paul George won't play half as good, because Aaron Gordon could play defense. He's locked. He's athletic. He's all that. And like Kawhi has good games against him, or has had good games against him. I'm not saying Paul George wouldn't, but those bad shots that he take, he won't be making those in a 7-game series. That's the reason why he's a streaky shooter. That's the reason why streaky shooters have moments and instances in seasons where they look so good, and then there's instances in the season where they start to look like trash. You see what I'm saying? Because there's not enough consistency in their game to balance out when you're playing better competition within a 7-game series. And even through the regular season, you can get by because you're playing different teams, and you're going to play some garbage teams. You're going to play some good teams. But when you got to steadily play one team and try to beat them and match them fire for fire, and they're actually just as good as you or better, then the consistency part really has to be more in flux then. And that's why I said, if they're not really running their offense too much through Kawhi Leonard, are they going to flip that switch in the playoffs? and say, hey, here, Kawhi, you take the ball and we'll all feed off your energy, when they really wasn't getting Kawhi into his rhythm within the season. You see, that's the problem. And that's the reason why I say the coaching for the Clippers is bad. The front office is bad, and all of it's bad right now. If you ask me, I mean, a lot of people are praising the fact that they're won a few games, but they're still 10-10. They're not like, it's not like they're really playing above 500 basketball. And at any given point, you're going to see they are probably going to lose the teams that you wouldn't expect. Like, I mean, the next game they got is against Utah. I feel like they should beat Utah. But, I mean, that's a game that they, possibly could lay an egg in, because, it's like it's not enough consistency with their balance. You see what I'm saying? These last few games, like I said, they've all been scoring. The 3 out of 4 other star players been scoring 20 points apiece or somewhere around that. And it's been working a little bit. But like I said, when you implement somebody like James Harden, who is a more ball dominant player, he's going to take away from one or a couple of star players on that team. And when you take away from somebody like Kawhi Leonard, of his caliber, who he is and what he means to a team and what he can do and how he can control a damn game by himself. We saw him do it in that Phoenix series, the 1 or 2 games he played last year in the playoffs. He literally controlled the whole game by himself. He is that dominant of a player. When you take away his superpowers, you're not going to win a championship, especially not with somebody who chokes like James Harden and who don't make a lot of those shots in big moments in the playoffs against better competition, along with Paul George hitting the side of the backboard and doing dumb shit like that. So I'm not believing in 2 guys who never won a damn thing. And if the Clippers are trying to put this team more in James Harden hands, then they're going to be in a world of trouble in the long run. I know right now it looks good. It looks promising. It looks like it can possibly work. Like I said, they're going to win some regular season games because they got too much talent on that team not to win regular season games. But hypothetically, if a team like the Phoenix Suns gets rhythm when Bradley Beal comes back, will they match up well against them? Maybe they will, but maybe they won't, because like I said, when you're running your offense through James Harden, that's a flaw usually when you're going in a 7-game series, because like I said, his decision making at times is piss poor, because the step back jumper that he takes sometimes is unwarranted. You don't need that. You need to find ways to be more aggressive, get to the paint, find guys, play the pick and roll with Zubac, and, things like that. And speaking of that, that's another thing that could be an issue. When you think of James Harden, his game is predicated off of benefiting himself and benefiting the whoever plays the 5 position. That's the reason why Joel Embiid won the MVP last year, because James Harden is still a good player, borderline great. And, his assists, him passing the ball, he's really gifted passing the ball. So it gave Joel a lot more, easier baskets, higher percentage shots, just because that pick and roll with James Harden, because he can shoot and step back and shoot. He's a threat offensively, which made it all work for them. But in big moments, there again, in the Boston game, the Boston series, how come they didn't beat the Boston Celtics? Jason Tatum struggled. Jason Tatum didn't play good, especially the last few games, but he found a way. Him and the Celtics found a way to get through that game 6, go to a game 7 and end it, where Philly had them beat. Philly had them against the ropes. But that's my point. James Harden didn't show up in the games you needed him to. And that's going to be the same reenactment with this team, more than likely. He's not going to show up in the games you need him to. So when you run your offense through James Harden, it really hurts team chemistry. It really does. It hurts team chemistry in regards to, it takes away from certain players and their dynamic and what they can bring. Because like I said, the Clippers don't move fast enough to bother a lot of teams when the playoffs come, because they almost play at a slower pace now than what they did, rather than when they had Russ in the starting lineup. And then, Terrence Mann, they were going to have him in the starting lineup with them as the shooting guard to be the other scorer that they might need to take a little load off of Kawhi and PG sometime when they're not scoring as well. So, I mean, that was a good thing, along with Bones Highland coming off the bench, along with Norman Powell. So, I mean, I thought that was a good operation they would have had if they would have stuck with it. But adding James Harden makes everything so much more difficult for everybody else. And I mean, like I said, winning games in the regular season is good, but winning in the playoffs, of course, means a lot more. And I just don't see the translation of how their offense is going now that's going to translate to the postseason that's really going to make them so much better. Because as I said before, I've never seen a team best player be standing in the corner waiting for an opportunity when he should be deferring the least, and you win a championship. That usually does not happen. The best player has to be himself. Ty Lue has to find a way to let Kawhi Leonard be himself. And the problem is with James Harden on the floor, there's not enough space to operate. Kawhi needs space to operate because he's an isolation player. He can take somebody off the dribble. He can step back. He can turn around, fade away, jumper, all that. He can shoot threes, but he needs space to operate. And the spacing on the floor isn't there with James Harden because he's a scorer. He's a shooter. So, I mean, and he moves a lot on the floor and do different things. So the spacing is not there for him. And sometimes it's not there for Paul George either. That's why Paul George just forces shots up there sometime where the shot looks bad. It's a bad shot. And sometimes he makes it, sometimes he doesn't. But he forces shots because it's like the spacing isn't there like it would be with Russell Westbrook, because Russ is not a shooter like that. Russ is not a threat, to step back, stand there and shoot from the perimeter and things like that. So Russ will pass the ball into the post or in the wing, 17 feet from the basket, and let Kawhi and PG do their thing. And he'll go up, and sometime when they miss a shot, Russ has the type of energy and the type of mindset, he'll go up and run to the rim every time one of them shoot, and he'll go up and try to tip the ball in and get a, tip in, rebound, and 2 points. But see, that's not something you're going to get from James Harden. You're not going to get that type of effort. And you would get that from Russell Westbrook every time, because Russ is really not trying to be a shooter. If he's put in a situation where he has to catch and let it go, he's going to do that. But at the same time, he know his place, and he's not a ball dominant type guy where he has to dribble, step back and shoot a three, dribble, all that stuff. And, gotta, set up a screen through Zubac to do a pick and roll. And see, it's too much that James Harden does that, that shrinks the floor for Kawhi and PG. The difference is Kawhi is smart enough to know he wants to take higher percentage shots, which is the reason why a lot of times Kawhi takes less shots than other players on the team, because if he just goes out jacking up shots all the time, that's going to lessen their chances of winning. So, I mean, Kawhi is a winner, so he knows what it takes to win, and he knows different angles of the game and being on the floor, how to be effective, where the other three players don't. So that's why I said, if you're not running your offense really predominantly through your best player, you're really setting up for failure in the long run. Because if your best player isn't touching the ball the way he's supposed to, well, he's not going to be in rhythm enough or feel like he's in rhythm enough by the time the playoffs come to just take over and flip a switch. And then the offenses all ran through him and everybody discombobulated what they need to do. That's why they need to start implementing, Kawhi a lot more now. And I think Ty Lue is just a huge mistake as a coach. I think he's just turning into more of a spitting image of Doc Rivers. And I think he's just utterly trash. And I think they just need to get rid of his stupid ass. And if Kawhi decides to stay, which I really kind of not sure he will, they're going to have to make a lot of changes to me, because like I said, I just don't see this turning into a championship. It could. I'm not saying there's not a chance. There is always a chance when you got 4-star players like this. But I'm just saying, with James Harden running your team and it's looking like they're trying to really run the team through him more so than really just get balance from every single player out of all the 4 players that they have. It's going to cause more confusion. It's going to make things not right. And then you got players like PJ Tucker coming out saying it's not enough balls on the planet for the Clippers, because it's like you got somebody like him who could play defense. Why isn't he getting more playing time? I understand his jump shot is not what it once was. I understand he's not as good defensively as he once was, but you got him along with James Harden, and you gave away some other defensive pieces that you really can't make up for. So you really gotta kind of sort of find a way to use PJ Tucker so he could take some defensive pressure off of Kawhi and PG, because if they're just out there playing defense and trying to score, well, they're going to get tired at some point. And when they get tired at some point and they get to the point where it's like they're starting to wear down a little bit at the end of the season, then you're going to sit there and be like, yeah, now they're wearing down. And then, when fatigue and all that comes in, There's another opportunity for more injuries like they've seen the last couple years. So the Clippers, they really got to start making better decisions as an organization if they want to win long term. Right now, I think they'll win some games during the season. I think, I think they'll make the playoffs, of course. And I think they'll win some games, but I also think you'll see some games during the season where you'll be like, they should have won that game. And how did they lose it? You see what I'm saying? You're going to see a lot of that still, because it's like, when you look at this team, like I said, the overall balance of the team, it looks okay short term, but long term, it's not going to be okay when you're playing against better competition. And when the game slows down in the playoffs and you're playing guys who are lengthy, guys who play defense, and guys who really, really want that. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, they played a team like Denver in a 7-game series. They would not beat them because Jokic is not going 9 for 32 4 games in a row. I don't give a damn if Zubac's on him. I don't give a damn if anybody's on him. He's not going 9 for 32 four straight games. It's just not going to happen. And there again, you got to look at this. Ty Lue is the type of coach just like Doc Rivers. When he puts a plan in, that's the plan the whole game. If you notice, whatever they run, they run the whole game. And he's not really that great at making adjustments. And when you look at a coach like Mike Malone and some other coaches out there like Frank Vogel, coaches like that, Nick Nurse, for the 76ers, when you look at coaches like that, they're actually good at making adjustments. They're actually good at seeing something that a team does well and counteract it within the same game. Ty Lue and coaches like Doc Rivers, they make adjustments the very next game, which means you'll lose the game that you're in, and then they'll try to make an adjustment the next game. But that's not good enough because the other coach is making adjustments on the fly within the game, which makes his team more superior. And that's the reason why I said, based upon the way the Clippers are built right now, if this is their plan going forward to try to really implement James Harden more and everybody else just feed off his energy, it's not going to work because, like I said, when other coaches make adjustments on James Harden and he's not passing the ball as effective and he's turning the ball over more against better competition when you play them, then what is it going to be? You're just going to sit there and try to say, oh, okay, here, Kawhi. Oh, okay, here, PG. Go out there and just try to win it for us. Well, you tried that in the past, and that's not really the formula for winning a championship. So my point is, the Clippers, you can't see it now. A lot of people can't see it, and I understand. But I do believe, in the future, you'll see what I'm talking about. Long term, the way they got this James Harden thing, it's not going to work, and it's not going to benefit the Clippers when it comes to them trying to propel forward and win a championship.